What's up, guys? We are back in Texas, and we wanted to take a minute and just kind of recap the trip and share some insight with you guys. Now, we are not like a lot of dealerships. I'm going to tell you guys what we loved about the Ember. I'm also going to go over any issues that we had, and then I'm going to tell you a few things that I would like to see change, but some of those are just kind of personal preference, but we'll just kind of get into that, and we'll just share all that. We'll just start with the rig itself. So 2026 Ember Overland 221 MSL. These things come pretty well decked out. One thing to be aware of is that here at Freedom RV, any double axle Overland, we always option with the second Battleborn battery. So you get 540 amp hours instead of the standard 270. Be aware of that when you're out there looking at pricing and all that good stuff. Tow vehicle, 2026 Ford F-250. We did opt to go with the 7.3 gas on that truck. I do have other diesel options, but I wanted that thing to be kind of more off-roady, and so I was looking for, just wanted to do gas on that. I know a lot of people are gonna, obviously prefer the diesel, but regardless, that's what we decided to go with. Now, we did use an equalizer hitch when towing the Equalizer brand. I know a lot of times people will use equalizer as kind of a generic term. The Equalizer 4-point. Now, if you watch the videos closely, you're gonna notice we had a pretty good bit of sag in the rear of that truck. So before we left, I actually did a full Carli suspension setup on that truck, which included the Carli progressive rear springs that are uber soft, like really, really, really awesome ride. I didn't want to do airbags because I really wanted to keep all my off-road capability. There are a few things you can do, but they're more complicated. Didn't want to mess with them. So we just had a little bit of rear squat. We were also loaded really heavy for this trip. So we're a family of 6, 30-day trip. So we were loaded very heavy. We had the back end of the truck loaded up, carried water all the time, all that good stuff. Let me tell you a little bit about the trip as well. Ended up California, Oregon, Wyoming, big round through Yellowstone, lots of national parks. We towed about 6,500 miles total for this trip. My truck will track all that, but you've got to be aware enough to actually make sure you've got your trailer selected, and there were several times when I didn't think about that. So didn't track all the mileage perfectly, but regardless, it was somewhere around 6,500 miles. Pretty good mix of, we did a lot of KOA camping. We did some national parks. We did a little bit of boondocking. We tend to do more KOA style camping while we're traveling, but then we tend to boondock more, especially when we head out west. My parents were actually traveling with us though with their camper. They're not really set up for a lot of boondocking, so we kind of deferred to them and did more campgrounds and things like that for this trip. Towing experience is exactly what you'd expect from the Overland. As most of you probably know, you've got the Curt independent suspension. If you've pulled trailers any amount of time at all, normally when you get the campground, you've got stuff literally strewn everywhere. Cabinets are open. You got to just batten down the hatches because stuff's going to fly everywhere. With the Overland, you really don't have much of that. Most of everything is pretty well where you put it when you left. About the only thing, like if we have to do a quick stop or something like that, we may have something lurch forward. But as far as the suspension itself, worked out phenomenally. Before we get into it, guys, I wanted to share, normally we recommend what I call a shakedown trip. Camp in the driveway, a local state park, something like that, where if you have any supplies you need, any accessories you haven't thought about, or if there's any concern that needs to be addressed, you're there close by to do that. We really didn't have time to do that for this trip. So we pretty much just hooked up to this dude, took off, headed towards California. I also do want to point out, I'm sporting my Matt's off-road shirt. That was one of our really cool stops. Kind of check out their facility, all that good stuff. So let's get into it. So let me start out with what we really like about the Ember Overland. And I've stressed this to you guys. I'm going to stress it again. Even if you don't do off-grid camping, even if you're not overlanding, there's a lot of really awesome stuff built into these rigs that are like a huge benefit to you that you probably don't even know about. I've done a lot of personal setups in the past where I've added Battleborn batteries, solar, all that good stuff. One of the things that we don't often consider is the efficiency of the camper as a whole. So the rigs I've done in the past just were not as efficiently built as the Overland is. There's a few things that really I want to point out that kind of add to that. The first is the windows and the shades. So the fact that you have these reflective shades and you've got the insulated windows makes this thing, it's just way more efficient first of all. So anything when you're talking about solar, battery, being able to off-grid, things like that, efficiency is the one area that people often don't think about. I have a lot of conversations with people about, well, how many solar panels, how many batteries do I need to do this? A lot of that depends on what your starting platform is. If it's a very inefficient starting platform, then kind of think of it as like aerodynamics in a car. If you were to ask me how to, make a car more efficient, there are things you can do, but you're not going to overcome certain things within the build of it itself. Secondly, absolutely love this air conditioner. We've talked about this in the past, and this is a Furrion AC. Excuse me, AC. Does a phenomenal job cooling the rig down. Super quiet, and it's super efficient. Most of the time, if we're out in full sun, there's 1,200 watts of solar on the Overland. So if we're out in the sun, once we've gotten cool maintained and got it cool in here, we're just maintaining cool, as long as sun's out, you're getting more energy coming in than what it takes to run that air conditioner. I kind of alluded to this in one of the other videos also as we were traveling. So even if you're not an Overlander, you're just traveling, one of the awesome things about a setup like this is you can fully utilize the rig any point, any time at a moment's notice. We left the air conditioner on 75 degrees the entire time we were traveling. So every time we stopped, come back here, want to use the bathroom, want to get a snack, even take a rest, chill for a little bit. It's cool in here. It's nice. Everything's self-contained. You can just utilize the camper just like you're plugged in at a campsite. Another great feature on a lot of the floor plans, not all of them, but any that have kind of this bunk area, fully customizable. So once again, family of 6, 4 kiddos. So we decided to set up the bunk area like this. So we put another bunk mat at the bottom. We've got the bunk here, and then we've got the half bunk up here. That way everybody's got a place to sleep. Well, 2 of them had to double up, but it's really cool that you can just kind of configure this however you want to make it work for you and your family. Let me show you guys the feature that surprised me most, that I'm aware of it. I knew it was here, but we figured out that it is really, really, really awesome. And it's this window. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of front windshields. You do have the potential to catch a rock. It's not happening all the time because I know tons of rigs have them, but just be aware, and some of the rigs we sell have the window. They do let in a lot of heat though. Why do I like this one better? Well, first of all, the angle that it's at, and there's also a kind of metal guard out there at the front. I don't know if you can see it from here. Let me see if we can. You can't really see it, but look at how much light we have in here. I'm just going to turn. So ceiling lights are off. I love being able to open that and have like the morning light come in. It's just awesome being able to do that. And also even at night, you can see out, but it's very different, because a lot of you probably are thinking, well, just open up your side windows, big whoop. Well, guess what? When I open this one, now people see in. I just lost all my privacy. I can keep all my side windows closed. I can open this guy up, and then I have tons of light coming in, which I absolutely love, 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 loved. But nobody sees in. I don't sacrifice my privacy. As far as the heat gain, typically you've got this big front window. Most manufacturers are just going to have a standard pleated shade. No kind of reflective anything. So right now this is dual pane acrylic, like caravan windows. So these are really, really nice, but you're going to get heat gain through that regardless. But if I close this guy, I've got that reflective barrier right there. It's a radiant barrier. Heat's going back. So totally cool. Let me just rapid fire you guys some of the things that we absolutely love, but they're small things, but they add up to big things. Dimmable main lights. Tons of outlets. All of the countertops are solid surface. No flex on pecs anywhere. Real wood cabinet doors and drawers with tongue and groove construction. Let me talk a little bit about what we added. We've done a ton of camping, and this is one of the things that really helps us here at Freedom, help you guys, because there's never going to be a camper that is absolutely perfect to fit your needs exactly. Well, I don't know. You could probably spend $300 or $400 grand and have somebody custom build you a camper exactly how you want, only to figure out that what you thought you wanted really wasn't really exactly what you wanted anyway, and then you figure out you blew all that money. But regardless, I think you get the point. So here are the few things that we did. So in the Overland, because this is a laminate roof structure, so this thing is like solid, we don't have ductwork in here. So we have the direct dump, but the louver actually moves to kind of mix the air. Works phenomenally, but they don't do a curtain here. So I'm actually working with Ember on that. I really think that this is a great option because it works great just for privacy. I added this curtain, so this is one of the things we did. And I also got one that was kind of a mesh up top, thinking maybe it would allow a little bit of airflow, but once again, we only use it temporarily when we need it, so it's not like that thing is staying closed all the time. We put a few hooks around just to add a little bit more storage. Once again, when you're hauling 6 people around, you got bags everywhere, so we did that. Oh, swing around, let me show you this. Another really cool thing, so the Ember track setup, not only can you move beds, but you can also get hooks. So I actually got on Amazon and grabbed some extra hooks, and so that allowed us to hang bags and things like that. Let me also kind of add to that whole thing about the solar and all that good stuff. So you've got a 3,000 watt inverter on the Overland. So not only can you stop, you run an air conditioner, so you can use microwave. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you literally have complete functionality of everything in the camper, even just stopping at a rest stop, parking lot, whatever. So for example, when we would stop and do lunch, we would utilize microwave. We had blender out, kids are making smoothies, toasters out. It's really awesome to be able to just use anything you want in the coach. Now you do still have to be aware that you kind of are at that 30 amp limit. So it's not like you can run everything. Don't come in and try to turn on microwave while blending, while toasting, while air conditioner on. So you still got to use that common sense, but everything is available and functional. During the trip, we utilized pretty much all of the appliances, everything that the rig has to offer, except for a few things. The Truma, we just didn't have to use it much. Once again, we're a family of 6, so we don't shower in our camper much. You just don't have the gray capacity, you don't have the fresh capacity. So we typically use shower facilities at the campgrounds. We did fire it off just to run it. As far as heat, the coldest temperatures we camped in were, I think, around 40-ish degrees. The Overland is so well insulated, we really didn't have to even use heat. I kicked it on a couple of mornings, 30 seconds, just to run some heat, just to say we did. But everything else we utilized constantly. A few other things that I want to just point out that are kind of small maybe to a lot of people, but when you actually get in, you start using them, it makes kind of a big difference. So I love how on pretty much all the Embers, the bathroom is really spacious and you got a lot of functional storage in there. Everything is set up like it needs to be. So you notice that toilet, it's like turned. And so it's in the most comfortable position where it needs to be. So that's one thing. Another thing, once again, it's a small thing most people don't think about, but you have a place to put a trash can. So a lot of campers we've had, there's nowhere to put a trash can. So little thing, but well-designed, well-thought-out campers, that's what you get. I know because I talked to a lot of you guys, and we've had a couple of different rigs now that have had Murphy beds. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, hate a Murphy bed, hate a Murphy bed. There are really good Murphy beds. There are really crappy Murphy beds. This is a really good Murphy bed in here. First of all, it's super easy to use. You have one latch, and then it just folds down. I just want to point out that it's also very, very, very comfortable. So occasionally we'll have somebody that's like, well, I don't want the Murphy bed. Well, the awesome thing about this bed is you can leave this down, and even if you want to put your big 10-inch thick memory foam mattress and just leave it as a bed, you can do that. Slide still runs perfectly. I know a lot of stuff out there that's got a Murphy bed. You can't even run the slide in with the bed down. With this, you can leave it down, leave it as a bed, whatever you want to do. But it works really, really well. Very well thought out. A quick little interlude for all you picky people that really just love spending your time watching YouTube videos and critiquing the crap out of them. Some of you may notice, well, why is there only one pillow? Well, I'll tell you why there's only one pillow. There originally were 2 pillows in here, but one of those pillows got completely covered in coffee when one of my daughters threw, I don't know, a different pillow to my wife that was holding this pillow and her coffee. So now we only have one pillow. Now for the fun part. Now, Freedom RV is a little bit different. Most dealerships are not going to point out any issues they had or even things that they might see that they're like, I think I might change this or do something different. But let me just go ahead and tell you guys what we had issues with. First of all, very minimal. This thing was really solid. So I know you're thinking, well, it's a salesman talking. whatever. I'm not going to convince you otherwise if that's what you think, but that's just not how we do things here. One of the things that, and I'm just going to show you, so we have, these all have soft close guides on the drawers, but you notice our top one does not soft close anymore. It does like kind of latch, but I got something going on with that. Haven't looked at it yet, but I do have to address that. This is something that the vast majority of you are not going to experience. I'm going to try to say this as quickly as I can. When you're doing lithium batteries, you got a couple of options on being able to track energy in and out of those batteries. It's not the same as a lead acid where your voltage is going to give you an indication of what your battery level is at. Traditionally, Ember and everything I've ever done has used some form of what's called a shunt. Goes in line on the negative connection and tracks all the energy in and out of the battery, and then gives you a readout, tells you kind of, once again, you know, how much time you have left, power in, power out, all that good stuff. Now, your other option is Battleborn now has intelligent batteries, so they will report all of that. Ember had traditionally used the shunt. All of the systems I built on my own back in the day always use the shunt. It'll communicate with the Servo GX that's installed in all the Ember stuff. This particular rig, and there was, I talked to Ember about this. I think they did either maybe like 60 or 80 units, don't quote me on that, where they were moving to the new intelligent battery and then using what's called a Battleborn hub to communicate data to the Servo. Well, there's an issue with that where it loses communication. I don't know all the ins and outs, but it basically, it will throw an error and give you a fault from the inverter, actually telling it that it's got low voltage when it in fact doesn't. It basically just throws a fault, beeps. It's very intermittent. Battleborn is working on a fix for that. I have heard that they actually have a firmware update that I think is going to resolve that. But once again, it was very minimal how many units went out with that. But that is something that is a possibility that some of you could potentially get something that's got that in there. So one of two fixes: either we go back to a shunt and then just wire the shunt in and it resolves it, or if the firmware fix that Battleborn has actually works, then we'll be doing that. But that's not something that's very common, but I wanted to point it out for full disclosure to you guys. As we're in here shooting this video, it's very interesting because my daughter swinging a camera back there, and we keep talking about things, and we're like, oh, we really like this, we really like that. So I said, okay, but we can't just sit here going on and on and on. But one other thing that we did both agree was a really, really nice thing that you don't see across the line. So if you notice on this bathroom door, the door actually goes like all the way right to the floor, and there's not this huge gap. You'll see that a lot on kind of cheaper builds a lot of times, where this door, there's just a big gap top and bottom. And also this door, this thing is like really, really solid. It's not paper thin like a lot of bathroom doors are. There's just a ton of stuff that I could just go on and on about that we really like about this. But for now, let's jump into the things that we would change. Anytime you're talking about things you would change in a camper, a lot of that's going to be kind of personal preference. This is, I think, our 14th camper we've had since like 2011. So we've been through a lot of campers because we've changed a lot in how we camp. I always kind of coach people, look, get the things that are big on your checklist, do business with a good manufacturer and a good dealer, and then find workarounds for some of the other things. So just take some of that for what it's worth when I start talking about some of these things that we would change, because one of you guys might like it exactly how it is. It's just our personal preference. All right, so the best way I can explain this is if I kind of go into a scenario. So any of you guys that are really impatient, kind of like I am, so pretend your wife's here, maybe she's cooking something standing here, you need to throw something away, or like we would do our plates and bowls and stuff over here, but you grab this and you open this and then, okay, check it out. I don't know how many times I smacked my wife's toes. So it's very aesthetically pleasing to have the cabinet doors that go all the way top to bottom, but it is definitely a toe getter. So we learned to kind of watch. My personal preference would be to bump this door just a little bit higher, maybe have like a 3-inch style on the bottom instead of the 1.5 inches or so, and just give a little bit more clearance for feet there. This is probably my biggest dislike. I think it's primarily because we've had other rigs that have this. I think it's the Bower lock setup. It's really stiff. It's not the door itself. You might get a little rub. We have to adjust on these some, but if you lube this latch up, it shuts great for about, I don't know, 10 times. And then it's back to being really, really stiff. And you have to literally slam it to get it to latch. I voiced this to Ember. I like the global lock better, but there's a few catches to that, because one of the great things about the Ember is you have one key. Everything. I mean, just one. Most other systems, you might be able to do a single key, but what is it cost prohibitive? You know, what are, like, is this the lock that's going to come with this particular door? So that I know there are other background considerations there. But if you were just going to ask me which door lock do you want, and that's what it'll have, I prefer the global. It just closes and opens smoother than this. If you carry a little oil and just every couple of days just put a little dab on there, it works flawlessly, but you got to do it or it's going to be hard to shut. Another thing that I personally would probably change, but there's a very good reason for these being where they are, is location of dump valves. So they're actually up here by the water station, and your flush connection is also here as well. The idea behind that is, I think, that you can actually close this, you lock it, it's secure, you don't have to worry about somebody pulling your valves and then you having a mess on your hands. So I totally get it. But let me show you guys. So the termination valve is actually back here at the back, and so I have kind of a little process I go through when I dump, and then how I dump, and what valves I open when. Notice that I also add a T58. This is a Valterra T58. So I have a final termination right here. And so anyway, over the years, I've kind of developed this little system, and how I do it, I have to walk back and forth pulling valves to do it. It would be easier if they were here. That's, once again, one of those personal preferences. Probably half of you guys would say, oh, I want those things locked up where somebody can't be messing around or a kid pull a dump valve. So I totally get it, but there it is. So a feature that I really, really liked and we used constantly is this wheel chock. But there is one thing that I want to point out, and that's this thing's adjustable, so you can screw this in and out. You need to get it where it's got a little bit of tension, but it's not too much, because we noticed that if you really lay into this, because there's a bar that you put on here, you can bow this out a little bit. So I actually bowed my mounting plate out a little bit on each side, so I'm going to have to kind of bend that back. So just be aware of that when you're utilizing this, that you make sure and adjust it where it's putting a little bit of pressure, and then you lock it in, but you're not having to really lay into it, because you can bend that mounting plate. All right, so as Josh Howerton would say, let me land this plane and just wrap it up. The Overland performed very, very, very well. Are there other things that you can put on here, and other things you might see out there in the market, like airbags or even more batteries, whatever the case may be? There are. The thing you've got to decide is, where do you want that balance to be, not only on cost, but also on weight and functionality. So one of the things that we have discovered is there's a lot of stuff that you can hang off of a truck or a camper or whatever that's overlanding stuff, but the sacrifice you get, or like the amount of sacrifice in weight and cost, like the benefit just doesn't add up. To hit that point where, so like right now, what we sell the 221 for example, is somewhere in the high 60s. I've heard other people throw out names, and I've looked some of these things up, and a camper that's similar in size and everything, I've seen rigs over $200,000. So you can spend an astronomical amount of money, but are you really getting a lot of benefit for all that extra expense? So I know for us, I'm kind of a bang for the buck kind of guy. So if I'm looking to have the functionality of this, I want what works. I want my money to go to the places where I get the benefit from it, but I don't want a bunch of extra weight. I don't want a bunch of extra complexity. And I don't want a bunch of extra expense. So the Overland does a really, really, really good job of giving you that complete package, making it all work. If you want more information, reach out to us here at Freedom RV. We would love to help you guys out and give you any more information that you might want, and we'll spend as much time as you want. We can go over the solar, batteries, all that good stuff. Once again, the fact that we use these and we have hands-on experience helps us help you. So thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe if you want more content like this. Hopefully you found it helpful, and if we can help you out in any other way, just give us a shout.